Chapter 20. Welcome. This one's called the Showdown because there's a lot of different conversations and interactions between Jesus, the Pharisees, and the teachers of the law, and Jesus showing them how he does fill prophecy, but it doesn't look the way that they think it looks like. So, let's jump into it. Verses 1 to 8 is the Pharisees asking Jesus a question to try and trap him, but obviously he's Jesus and he knows what they're about. And so they're basically saying, "Tell us what authority you are doing these things, and who gave you this authority?" And Jesus is like, "Hold on, let me ask you a question. Who gave John the authority?" And they're like, "Okay, well, if we say this, then they're going to be like this. And if we say this, then this happens." And Jesus is like, and so they're like, "We don't know." And Jesus is just like, "Yeah, okay, then I'm not going to give you an answer." So, showdown number 1. Showdown number 2, verses 9 to 19. Jesus tells a parable about a man who planted a vineyard, hired some people to take care of it. So now it's time for the harvest. He sends one of his servants to go get food, and they beat him up because they're like, "We're not going to send food back." So then he sends another servant, and they beat him up again. And he's all like, they go through this process, and finally he's like, "Okay, I'm going to send my son because I love my son. They'll respect my son." And they're like, "Ooh, it's the son. Let's kill him, and then we'll get the land and we can get all of the fruit from it." So then Jesus says, "What then will the owner of the vineyards do to them? He will come and kill those tenants." Basically, the ones that were taking care of the land, they were beating up the others and killed his son. He's going to kill them, and he's going to give the vineyard to others. Watch this. We find this funny. When the people heard this, they said, "God forbid." Okay, like, you get this parable? Like, Jesus been telling parables the whole time, you guys aren't picking it up, and all of a sudden you get this one. Well, there's a reason they get this one, because this one feels very pointed towards them because it is. So, the owner of the vineyard represents God, and when he's sending these servants to go collect, that's like the prophets and the priests that came that they beat up or killed, because, read the Old Testament, it's a great, great part of the Bible. And then the son that the owner sends, aka God sends his son, who is Jesus, they kill Jesus. Jesus is still telling them, basically, "You're going to kill me." But they don't realize that part of it yet. What they're more concerned about is it goes to somebody else. And what do we know? It goes beyond the Jews. It goes to the Gentiles. It goes to all of creation, who God created all of creation for. So it's like everybody else is going to get the inheritance. Now, there are Jews that get it. There are those of us that are not Jews that are considered Gentiles that get adopted in. But it's just interesting. That's the parable they got. So we jump down to verse 19. Then the teachers of the law and the chief priests looked for a way to arrest him immediately because they knew that this parable had been spoken about them. Well, somebody's finally catching on. But they were afraid of the people. Yeah, okay, showdown number 2. Jesus is showing them, literally, "This is what you're doing. I see you." But they're playing right into what he's saying they're doing. Like, they don't even realize they're following the script he just gave them. Okay, showdown number 3. This one's fun. So, verses 20 to 26. It starts off with, keeping a close watch on him, they sent spies. Okay, have we ever, talked about first century espionage? Like, what? They actually had spies who pretended to be sincere to try and trap Jesus. And so they're like, "Oh, Jesus, we know that you're good and you teach the way of God. So is it right to pay taxes to Caesar?" And then I love it says, verse 23, he saw through their duplicity. Because, he's Jesus. He sees through things. So he asked them a question. He says, "Show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription is on it?" Okay, they're not supposed to have a denarius. I learned this in one of my classes, and I've never heard this anywhere else. And I'm like, how interesting. Like, they weren't actually supposed to have, their Greek money. They're supposed to have their own money. But they have the Greek money. And so this is where Jesus trapped them, because it's like, if you are following the way of God, you're not going to be doing this. But you are, so give to Caesar what's Caesar and give to God what's God's. And ultimately, we know that all human government is subject to a higher power, past, present, and future. So be aware of that God has the final say. And I love the last line because, astonished by his answer, they became silent. Yeah, you just got burned, little buddies. Yeah, showdown number 3. That was a fun one. Birdie, do you want to say hi to the people? Do you say Merry Christmas? No, you just want to play. You just want to play. You want to read the Bible? Showdown number 4. This one is funny. Again, kind of similar to the spies where they're pretending to do something. So here we have the Sadducees. So we have Pharisees and Sadducees, they're different teachers of that time. And they don't believe in the resurrection. They don't believe that people come back to life after death. But they asked Jesus this question. Basically, they're going back to the law of Moses. Moses writes the law: if a man dies, then his brother has to marry the woman. And then they go through it, like, so on and so forth. So, like, okay, but this brother dies, and so she marries the next brother, and then that brother dies, and they go to the next brother. So, like, really, whose wife is she? And Jesus is just like, okay, guys. Basically, there's not marriage in heaven. People can't die, and they're like the angels. They are God's children. He says, but in the account of the burning bush. So he kind of takes what they're asking, and then he's going to give them their answer, but then he's also going to give them his answer of, like, this is what you need to hear. I know what you're asking, but I also know what you need to hear. And he says, for the Lord God of Abraham and God of Isaac and the God of Jacob, he is not the God of the dead, he is the God of the living. To him all are alive. So they're asking, whose husband is she, or whose wife is she gonna be? You know, like, who does she belong to? And he's like, so there is a resurrection. We're not gonna focus on the marriage question you have. I'm gonna tell you that there is resurrection. And they say, well said, teacher, well said. And then they didn't ask any more questions because they were too afraid. Like, boom, roasted. 4th time. Showdown number 5. This one's just packed, okay? Let's just, anyways. Jesus says, why is it said Messiah is the son of David? David himself declares in the book of Psalm, the Lord said to my Lord. So how can he be his son? You know, so there's this whole thing. And so the people of the time believe the prophecies of there's a coming Messiah. They have this image that he's going to be a descendant of David, he's going to be a great military leader, and he's going to overthrow Rome, or whatever the government is at the time. The time they're living in is Rome. They believe, obviously, he's going to overthrow Rome. And Jesus is like, yes, but he is the son of David. He is also the son of God. And so, like, Jesus is showing them, you've heard it this way, but it's really this way. So you see it as happening in a certain way or line of thinking, but really this is how God fulfills it. And, like, isn't that kind of how we are? Like, we have our prayer requests or how we think our life's gonna go, and we're like, okay, God's gonna answer this way. And, like, God answers the way that he needs to answer, but it doesn't look the way that we think. But it's ultimately always better because obviously his ways are much better than our ways, and his script is greater than our script could ever be. I don't know that I can call this one a showdown, but it would be showdown number 6. This one's just full on roast. Jesus is just like, while people are listening to him, he tells them, be aware of the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in their flowing robes and love to be greeted with respect in the marketplace and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. Remember, he's talked about this before, but, like, don't choose that seat. It's better to be elevated than it is to be humbled. He continues, they devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely. And it just ends with that. Like, all right, don't be like them, be aware of them, but also they're going to get their dues when it comes to them. Like, yeah. Okay, so that's chapter 20. That's just Jesus roasting everybody around him. So, just leaves me with this idea of, like, the roast with Michael Scott and Jesus, like, what would that actually look like?